Anybody else excited about today? I come with anticipation and expectation in my heart. And I thank Sister Raquel. She is Sandy to me. You know how these West Indians are. Multiple names. You go to their workplace, you're like, who's Sally? Oh, that's on your birth certificate. Anyhow, as Sister Raquel was up here ministering and just sharing with us, I was brought back to being 17 years old and moving to Brampton from Ottawa. And I went to camp, and it was at camp that this young woman really spoke to me and began to help me understand what it meant to be a follower of Christ. Being a follower of Christ, I got saved because I was scared. I didn't want to go to hell. I remember at my baptism, you would think that somebody was forcing me to do it because I was like shaking in my boots. I was afraid that I was going to drown. It was my father who was baptizing me. There was no confidence. I was like, and I remember one of the ladies on the choir looking at me. She's like, why are you so scared? But I was afraid that something was going to happen to me. But I remember my testimony was like, I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to be left in the rapture. So I'm giving my all to God. So that's how I got into the kingdom. It was through fear. But as I grew and matured in the Lord, I remember specifically Raquel talking to me about being used. Like there's something that you need to be doing. And I believe at the time, it was just before I joined a choir ministry called Faith Outreach. And she was a part of that. And I remember realizing, oh my goodness, it's not just about making it to heaven. There's something that I am meant to do while I'm here on earth. And that was sort of the beginning of ministry where my heart was in it. I was born and raised in church. So you're kind of like, if you sing, whatever you do, you kind of have to do it. But my heart wasn't in it. And for me, this is what this conference is really about. My desire is to encourage each and every one of you here to recognize what God is wanting to do through you right now in your life. There is a reason why you're here. There is a gift that you have that is unlike the gift that any other person has. You know, maybe you're a personal trainer. Maybe you are a teacher. Maybe you're a singer. Well, you're going to meet other personal trainers or singers or teachers, but they're not going to be exactly like you. And my desire in this whole event and anything I really do is to help women to recognize, God, through this topic or subject, what are you wanting to pull out of me? So that's my desire today. The theme for what I'm sharing on today, it's saying no to fear. Thank you. Saying no to fear. And you might ask the question, you know, why? Why are we talking about fear? We'll get into that a little bit later. It's funny. Fear is something you can't run away from. You just can't hide from it. Even yesterday was Friday, right? I was getting my nails done, and I saw somebody posted something on Facebook. And it was a woman who came to the conference in 2012, and she had written, after the conference, she had written this long post about what God had done in her life and how he had used her and brought somebody else into her. Like, she just met another woman here and was talking with her, and she was able to encourage and sort of minister to her and all that stuff. So she wrote a post about it. So this year, she reposted it in trying to encourage women to attend. And I was reading and I thought, oh, wow, that's so wonderful. But just as quickly as that thought came into my mind, I started to feel nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, this year's got to be even better. Because now she's inviting all these people and telling them how fabulous it is. How am I going to make sure that... And then I walked with that for a little bit. By this time, I was in Walmart. So I'm thinking, oh, and then it hit me. That had nothing to do with me. What God did had nothing to do with me. And what he is going to do today has nothing to do with me. So, there goes the pressure. As long as we come with a heart that is open and receptive to receive from him, he's here. He's going to do it. And my encouragement is that each and every one of us would take the time to mix, to mingle, talk to somebody who maybe you didn't know when you walked in the door, and see how God is going to use you to be an encouragement to them, or how God is going to speak through them to encourage you. Is that all right? Good stuff. So, if I can get Natasha, if you can go to the next slide, or sorry, Nadia. So what we're going to be talking about today, I'm not going to be before you very long. We're going to be talking about, why fear? Why are we even focusing on fear? We're going to talk about what fear is. We're going to ask ourselves the question, what am I afraid of? We'll talk about the importance of your feelings, the purpose of fear, and how to say no to fear. So that's what we're going to cover together. And what I really like about going first is that after I'm done, I can enjoy the rest of the day. Oh, the pressure is gone. And I know that this is what I'm covering in my session, but throughout the course of the day, God's going to continue to just unfold and just, take a different turn or a different angle on things. So I'm excited about that. So, third slide, please. Why fear? Colleen, why do we have to talk about fear? It's one of those emotions, it's one of those things that is unpleasant. And don't we prefer sometimes to not talk about the unpleasant things? Isn't it easier to just focus on the good things? Like, why can't we have a conference about love, joy, peace? Right? I mean, we could. And truly, to answer the question, honestly, I don't know why fear. That's just what God placed on my heart. From the very beginning of, like as soon as the event last year was complete, I said, okay, God, what's next? And I was waiting, and what I received was no fear. I said, okay, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to let it germinate. No fear, no fear, no fear. It didn't shift away from that. So it was N-O, fear. Right? And in my mind, I'm thinking, yes, we're going to talk about saying no to fear. We're going to talk about, not allowing it to manipulate and control our lives. But actually, as I was speaking to my mentor, we were talking about it, and I was sharing with him one of my mentors. I say that only because every time I say it, my dad and my mom's like, well, aren't we your mentors too? So it's funny how God just allows many people, right, in your life to speak to you and encourage you. So we were having a conversation, and he was saying, and I was telling him about it, and it's like, yeah, he said, yeah, it's like we all know fear, like we all know it. And then it just hit me. We have to know fear before we can say no to fear, right? There's no running away from the fear that we experience and we feel. And that's what I'm wanting us to really begin with. You have got to recognize the things that fear has said no to in your life. Right? What is it that fear has said no? Knowing that you can't do that. No, Michelle, no, you're going too far now. Come back here. Fear has a way of telling us what we can and we cannot do. But I believe that what God is wanting us to begin to do is to say no to fear. And you have to be willing to acknowledge what is fearful in your life. Instead of continuing to allow fear to manipulate and control your life, we have to learn how to say no to fear. Fourth slide, please. What is fear? How would you define fear? Fear is defined as an unpleasant emotion that is caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, is going to cause pain, or is a threat. So fear is an unpleasant emotion. It is something that it's the belief that someone or something is dangerous and likely to cause you pain or is a threat to you. And every single one of us experiences fear. 5th slide. So we've got to ask ourselves the question, what am I afraid of? It's fine if you want to come to this conference because it's a really good topic for your neighbor or your mother. And maybe, some people have said to me, I really wish so-and-so would come to this conference, It would really be good for her. And that's good. But you're here because of what you need. And you need to ask the question. You need to allow yourself to ask the question, what am I afraid of? Like I said before, we don't like necessarily to talk about the unpleasant stuff because it's uncomfortable to hold. But God's here. He's with us. And before we ask him to intervene, we've got to allow him to show us what's going on. So there's different types of fear. And I'm sure we could go around the room and people would have great examples. But for the sake of time, I'm going to throw out a few that, I came up with that I believe we'll all relate to. We could be afraid of pain. We could be afraid of, danger. Every time I go to get a needle, it's like, it's not really bad, but it's pain. If you're in a car and you feel as though as Sister Marjorie was talking, it's like instinct. It's automatic. You can't even help yourself. And the fear of something's like this knee-jerk reaction. The fear of death. I was saying to someone last week, out of the complete blue, we were watching some program on TV, and they all rolled their eyes, and I was like, do you guys ever wonder what it's like to die? Like, when you're having another conversation about something, and then some other person just comes up with that was me that day. But, we got to think about this. Sometimes we don't because we're afraid. The fear of the unknown, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of embarrassment, fear of shame, fear of failure, fear of success. What are you afraid of? If I were to ask you what your biggest fear is, how would you answer that question? And maybe that's a difficult question to answer because I think through different seasons of life, you may have certain fears and they might fade away as that season is gone. I know for me, every time my kids started daycare, of course, two of their daycare providers are here right now. Every time they started daycare, there was this fear. Are they going to be safe? Is something going to happen to them? And then after, I don't know, it's kind of like it's just in you. You know they're safe. You bring them to someone that you trust. But it's after time of dropping them off, hearing they're doing well, and it just becomes a routine in your life. So there's certain things that you fear for a season. And then, of course, there's other fears that just, won't go away. I'm going to share, a couple of my own examples. And I do that because I think that it's nice when people are transparent because we can relate to one another. So one of my biggest fears, if I'm to be honest, is, and this is something that isn't seasonal. It's something that is a part of my personality and my makeup. So one of my biggest fears is people not liking me. I'm a true middle child. I'm a true middle child. I am, by nature, a people pleaser. I'm a people pleaser because I want people to like me. I want my parents to be proud of me. I want my husband to adore me. I want my siblings to respect me and to value me and think that I'm the greatest sister that ever walked the face of the earth. I'm just being honest, right? Okay, fine, maybe not that ever walked the face of the earth, but I want them to think highly of me. And, you have to get to a place of being honest with yourself in order to be able to recognize how fear works. So, I know that I have this tendency to want to please people. So, what do you think happens when you've got to say something to someone that maybe they don't want to hear? Or maybe you have to make a choice that is going to upset someone that matters to you. Fear is an opportunity for fear to come up and be like, no. Don't do that, because that means you might be, well, they're not going to like you. and so we have to pay attention to our feelings. The next slide. If my husband were in the room, he might be rolling his eyes right about now. Feelings, here we go again. Of course, leave it to the counselor. Let's talk about our feelings. But it's important. Our feelings are a gift from God. Our feelings and emotions, they tell us what's going on. They show us the things in our life that need our attention. And when we allow the Lord to help us to pay attention to our emotions and our feelings, I'm not saying that our feelings are supposed to run our lives. I'm saying, remember, God is the one that created us with these emotions. And so, we need to allow the Lord, with the Lord, we have to allow our feelings to say, okay, this thing over here is needing some attention. So let's use fear as an example. Here it is. I'm going to use an example for one of the ladies that's here. I won't identify her, but she knows who she is. I have this fear of